You know, the Bible talks about the fivefold ministry, and one of those is prophets. And there's a lot of controversy about prophets, and I think because many people haven't studied it, and they don't know a lot about it, and therefore sometimes when we don't know a lot about something, we may be leery of it, or we may get preconceived ideas. But it's in the Bible, it's in the New Testament, so it's for us today. And our first guest, Dr. Paula Price from Tulsa, Oklahoma, has written a book entitled The Prophet's Dictionary. It's over 600 pages in length, the ultimate guide to spiritual or supernatural wisdom, and the forward is by our friend Dr. Bill Hammond. So please join Joni and me as we welcome Dr. Paula Price. Dr. Price?
Thank you.
The price is right?
Yay!
Okay. Well, obviously the first question is, why did you write this book about prophets?
Because when God woke me up and told me that's what I would be in my journey in the Lord, I researched and looked for information. Coming from the business world, I was looking for information that told me what I should act like. How should I think? Is this God? Am I going crazy? And most prophets right now are, this far from going over the edge because they don't know how to ground themselves. Looked around, could not find anything on prophets or the prophetic except prophecy. And so when I did that, what happened was God let me know, you don't find it because, well, you're going to write it. Well, of course, I laughed because that was 20 years ago, so I did laugh. But over the years, as I began to develop prophets, I realized we have no common language. We have no common barometer for measuring who is or who isn't. We have no mindset even of why God, number one, installed the office, and number two, sustains it.
Yes.
And so those are things that had to be handled.
So tell us a little bit about your background, because you were working in a secular environment when the Lord kind of called you full-time into ministry.
Yes, I was an account executive for major accounts for a large communications company, and so I sold data, voice, all of those kinds of things, and was very involved in business, which is why my book doesn't sound like your traditional type of text. I did a lot of training, a lot of research. It required research. So God just one day took me from the boardroom and threw me into the pulpit.
Wow.
And Dr. Price, how long did it take to write this? I mean, 600 plus pages. That'd take me my whole life to do that.
Well, actually, it took me about 3.5 years to get it written. It's been, of course, purged and whatever. I already have a second edition on the, in the back of my mind. But literally, that book is in its third life. When I first did it, I was trying to write a glossary. I was not setting out to write a dictionary. I was training prophets, and when you have no common language and no common thought line, it's very difficult to educate someone so that everybody sounds like they are coming from the same place. So I started researching different terms. The research took me about 8.5, 9 years.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about, for those who are watching, help us to understand Old Testament, New Testament prophets. Who are some of your favorites?
Am I excited? My favorite Old Testament prophets, three: Moses, Samuel, and Daniel. Right now, the church is moving into the mantle of the Daniel prophet. So that's what's going to take over. But we don't really understand that.
What does that mean, a Daniel prophet?
Well, Daniel prophet is a prophet in high government. He was an officiator of 3 major kings. He was also the prophet that was here, established by God to see to it that even though his people were dispersed, God still had control of all government. So Daniel, I like to talk about Daniel, so give me just 5 seconds to say this one odd thing. We read about Daniel and we think Daniel had dreams, and that was great. Wasn't that wonderful? Daniel had dreams. But when you read that Daniel was 10 times better than every magician, every soothsayer, every wizard, every predictor on the planet, and God made him 10 times better. Now that's staggering.
Yeah.
Now this is interesting. I got to say this because Joni and I are participating along with our home church, Gateway Church, in a 21-day Daniel fast.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't been eating any meat or any sweets or cold drinks and all of that, and it's been vegetables, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of what Daniel and the Hebrew boys did for 10 days, and then they tested them, and just like you said, they came out 10 times better than everybody else.
And he was strategically placed by God in the palace.
Because he was even in the palace in Israel. Many of us don't know that. But Daniel fasted 21 days to prove that God could download a better mantle than anything Nebuchadnezzar's teachers could ever give. So his fast was to produce power and to produce brilliance and intelligence.
So what is the role, what is the purpose of prophets today?
The whole institution of God is very, very to me very simple. Number one, prophets are God's divine communicators. If God thinks it, he has a prophet that's going to say it. If God feels it, a prophet is going to say it. When you read the Old Testament, the prophets turn up as the most brilliant people and the most brilliant institution throughout the Bible. Who gave us the story of creation? A prophet. Who gave us how God did whatever he did when he finalized the earth and we had the flood? A prophet. The entire Old Testament is God thinking through this divine communications entity, which is his messenger. The New Testament, many times I tell people, the prophetic is so old that it goes back to Abel. Because Jesus said in Luke 11, 49 through 51, that Abel was really killed because he was a prophet. Not because he just did the sacrifice. Now, Jesus would know who he hired and fired. So, as we go forward in the New Testament, the prophet's role is to support the mantle of the apostle. So, if the apostle comes and say, God is doing so-and-so, the prophet is going to say, this is the doctrine, this is the teaching, this is the mind of God, these are the revelations and the declarations. It takes a prophet, for example, to let you know who really is an apostle. Because, I mean, you know, who else knows? And it's important to recognize that, if I can just finish up with this thought, it's important to recognize that the apostle's office is the only office Jesus directly instituted. Every other office comes out of the apostle's mantle.
You know, we just have come through the holiday season, and our family went to see the Nativity. One of my favorite scenes in that movie is when Mary goes to see Elizabeth, and Elizabeth's baby jumps within her womb, which would, of course, be John the Baptist, who was one of the great New Testament prophets. So do you think that prophets are chosen even before they're born?
Two things I do know about prophets. John the Baptist, you brought it up, is a great example. Number one, John the Baptist proves that the prophet's mantle, no prophet's mantle was ever retired by God, because John the Baptist was actually raised up to manifest Elijah's mantle. So he's a transition prophet. He is a repentance prophet. He's a prophet that's going to tell a nation who had no idea who the Messiah was, what he looked like, when this word is going to be fulfilled. And when it happens, God said, you're going to be the one to say, this is the one who baptizes by fire. Prophets set people up for the next level of what God is going to do. A prophet is going to progress you to the next dimension in God. And I really get excited when I think about it, because I look at the fact that many prophets today don't even know that this whole movement has been about advancing the world, not
Can
just the church.
somebody be a prophet and not know it?
Yes. And you know what?
And then how do they come to know that they are a
Well,
prophet?
actually, in my dictionary, I have what I call 20 traits of the prophet. Everybody who is a prophet starts out having dreams as a kid, but they also meet the supernatural as a kid. Most young prophets have had bad dreams. They were known for nightmares, and most of them have had an imaginary friend. You know, they have the guy that helps them get through trouble. And that has to do with them being highly constructed to pick up the supernatural realm of God. However, it doesn't start that way. So I've
So they're
screened
spiritually
prophets,
sensitive.
and awakened. And so, secondly, prophets tend to be hungry for the supernatural. They're going to watch the horror shows, the gory, all of that. And when Jesus comes in, what he does is he doesn't make you a prophet. What he does is that he purges who he created you to be before the foundation of the world, and then installs you in his service.
Okay, here's a controversial question. Are prophets self-appointed? Are they recognized by the church? Are they acclaimed by or proclaimed by the church? How does somebody become or recognized as a prophet?
The number one thing we need to know is prophets don't exist for people. The apostle and prophets represent, if we had to put it in natural terms, the federal branch of God's kingdom. So they don't exist for people. Prophets exist for the sender or the speaker. So it's like your telephone. Your telephone doesn't exist for who answers it. It exists because you're sending a message you want to communicate. So having said that, the typical church today has been trained for what, hundreds of years, that we're dead, we shouldn't be, etc. So we have an uphill climb because you can't really figure out what we do. But a prophet is a prophet the first time God speaks to them. But a prophet steps into the office when one of God's established institutions recognizes and appoints them. Because without the office, you're just freelancing.
That's an excellent answer. Okay, the book is The Prophet's Dictionary. And Dr. Price, how can people get this book?
Well, it's in all your major bookstores. It's in Amazon.com, and they can also contact Anchor Distributors, who is a branch of my publisher, Whitaker House, for the book.
All right,
And they can go to my selling all around the world. It's in, I don't even know, numerous nations. They tell me it's already going into its third printing from its release in May. And the book it's also doing something else unusual. It's crossing all lines.
Good.
And, now this is the part most Christians won't like, even the occultists love it.
Why do they like it?
Well, because it deals with subject matter that they think is not Christian. So I went fishing. I didn't make it Christian. I made it for the prophet. So we talk about other gods, we talk about other religions, we talk about other rituals, because in the Bible, that's what prophets were raised up to do, to confront the darkness and its genius, and to establish the excellence of the Lord God of hosts.
Great. Dr. Price, thank you for being with us. Thank you for writing this book. And again, if you want to get the book, the information is on the screen, or you want to contact